and welcome to our Tuesday community-led training with Unreal Engine. For those that are unaware, we've gone to a format where we're only doing one training from Unreal Engine on Thursdays, and then on Tuesdays we're boosting our community leaders and members to offer training sessions of their own. So this week we have Peter Newton, and he'll be exploring code principles and Blueprint, but a lot of these are applicable to C++, so if you're not a Blueprint person, still stick along or stay tuned and see what he's got for you. So take it along, Peter.
Hey, what's up everyone? This is Peter L. Newton, and thanks for joining me. I'm going to be showing you guys how to manage your blueprint, or how to organize it, really. And so, I really want to start off with the why, and that's because I remember plenty of times where I would come back to blueprint, or my blueprints, and it's like 2 months later, and I've completely forgotten like how everything works. And even though I've sort of like commented, as you can see, like I have comments in my own code, but it still doesn't really help when you dig down deeper into some of these functions. And so what we're going to talk about today is single responsibility principle. And it basically means you want to encapsulate one responsibility per function. And so, as you can see, like here, I have this bind event for a click, and then the click goes here, and all it's responsible for is clicking this target. There's no other operations that are happening. It's getting the information that it needs to click, determining whether this click is valid, and then enabling that. Now, a lot of the stuff I've done out here is pretty well done, but inside some of these functions is actually the problem, because these are actually reasonably sized functions, even though these lines are definitely what I want to get rid of the most. The lines just really cause a lot of confusion. Inside these functions is where it's really bad. Let me switch to the other project. And so you can see I have two projects open here because one I've modified and cleaned up, and one is the original. So I'm going to close out these tabs, go to clear targets, and you can see the original. It's a mess. It took me some time to figure out what was going on in here, and this is a well-working system. Everything makes sense. It's just it could be a lot better, right? So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to look at what I've coded in the past, try to understand it, and break it down to smaller functions, create a lot of variables because that makes it very clear what's happening throughout your code. Because really, if you think about code as reading a book, you can really only memorize sections of the book at a time. You can like maybe hold a page in your memory and continue to add to that, but then like you'll slowly lose what was happening in the past, even though you're keeping up with the story, but you don't remember everything at once. And so like the same thing with code, you only want to remember sections of the code, and you want to have all the information that you need right in that section that you're trying to think of. And so that's what we're going to do today. So that's kind of the big why. And so people also say that Blueprint's kind of inferior to C++ or like some other like C# or things like that, which really doesn't make a lot of sense to me because they're both programming languages. I think if you apply certain principles to Blueprint and you use it as a programming language, just as you would any other language, it can be effectively used and powerful. There's a lot of strengths in Blueprint, and that is, it's very easy to prototype things. You don't have to put in a lot of effort to get something working. You don't have to install new libraries. Everything just works. There's no pointers. There's no memory management really. You just got to make sure the asset's there or whatever the member's there, and everything just works. And so let's try and get started with that. So now that you kind of understand the why and kind of what SRP is, you can imagine why it helps you, right? So for debugging and for like bugs and like just like I said, memory and playback, it's impossible to really understand what's going on if everything is just scattered around. Like I can look at other functions in here that aren't as convoluted, but it's still, you have to ask yourself like what's going on here. Like I'm breezing through this and I can't really understand what's going on, and that's really important. So I want to continue to drill on, like, even this function's very small, and all these wires just it's just spaghetti. You can't do anything with this. It makes sense. Like, okay, I can sit here and concentrate very hard. Okay, this line. Oh, let me highlight over this. Oh wait, can you? Damn it! Wait. Oh wait. Oh, this one. So this is what we're gonna work on. So let's try with this one. Like, what could we do here to improve this very short function, right? I'm going to create a new variable, promote it to a local one, and call it visible actor. Of course, it can't be the same as the input. If I can spell visible. Actor. And I'll create another one. And just pop those there. And that one there. So it's like a very simple step. I know there's already talks of making local variables happen. I believe there's already a possibility of doing it in macros. You can just get the local variables from the input. But until then, what you really should do is just like any other function, you want to create the variables to then reuse those variables within the function itself. And that just makes things a lot easier. Of course, if you have certain things like, oh, I'm going to do a is valid check and things like that, you might just have to do that later in the code, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And that's just the way some things are. So I'm going to continue forward, break that one off, and now I'm going to check visible actor. And I have to pull this down because I can't really see where all the wires is going, and this is why we're doing this. Pull visible, break that off, have visible again here, so I'm going to pull this again, and we're just kind of like doing this safely so that we don't break anything, right? Definitely don't want to go back, refactor your code, and then it doesn't work. And you're just coming back from, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months of just not looking at it, and you break it. So that would definitely be the way to start your day. Remove that, paste that here. Damn it. Paste that one here. There we go. Yeah. So even though it's kind of tedious, like, oh, I have to copy and paste the same variable everywhere, and yeah, I mean that's it. Usually the things you don't want to do are the best things for you. So oh wow, I can't believe I said that. But anyway, got to get these variables all organized. Okay, this is a lot more manageable. I'm going to just create some separation just to make it easier to see, easier on the eyes. I mean, this is all kind of subjective. Of course, you want to give your variable some space. Maybe you want to, helix your variables like Epic has been doing. It's totally up to you. It's really totally up to you. Let's see. I think the biggest takeaway for me is just you want to make sure that when you look at your code, it's like, okay, I see two actors being saved. Okay. Now it's like you're building up a story in your mind. Okay, now I have these two actors. I'm going in here. Okay, that actor's not valid. Okay, what's gonna happen? Okay, now it's gonna check if that other one's valid. Okay. Okay, it's gonna add it. But if these were just lines, and now it's reading this section, and there's lines off the screen, how would you understand what was going on? And so that's the point of the variables. And it's a very basic thing. I get it. But that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And so this is the big one. Um, I mean, believe me, this system works great. You hit play, assuming it doesn't break. You hold shift. I don't know if you've seen this before. It's an advanced target system. It's kind of like an RTS, or you can use it for FPS too, or third person, whatever. But basically, you select these units. You can hold shift, or I think I can hold. Yeah, whatever. If you just select, it only holds one. It only selects one. But if you hold shift, it selects all three. Now you hold control, hit X, and it'll move all the units there, and I can just select one if I want, and yada yada. So this is my target system, and we're modifying this because this is a very good example of going back to something I worked on in 4.15, and I'm working on it now in 4.17 preview 2, and I'm trying to understand what the hell I was doing. And so all of this code right here makes sense, but it's really confusing. And when other people are trying to develop on it, or maybe try to extend it, it's really confusing for them, because they go into some of these functions, say like this one, grab new actor, and it's, again, very, very simple. You're just going to check for a trace, add if it's valid, check the class, make a selection, don't make a selection. But because everything is in wires and spaghetti land, it makes it very hard to have a coherent and followable code. And so let's start off with this big mumbo jumbo here, and we're going to demonstrate just examples of taking chains of functions and breaking them out into different groups of intent, or whatever you want to call it, and removing any repeatable code. Because one thing is, if you don't organize your code in such a way that you're using patterns, and you're preventing duplication, you really can't see what work is being repeated over and over. It becomes impossible. Like, for example, if you look at this code, you wouldn't obviously see that what I'm doing right here is the exact same thing I'm doing right here. Like, they're identical. So you have to ask yourself, why have someone read this, completely understand what's going on up here, come down here, and think it's completely different. And so that's what you're doing. When you expose everything and you don't encapsulate your logic, you're actually making every instance of your work different, and that makes it harder to remember, essentially. So again, I don't want to be repeating this all day. So let's just get started. I'm going to break this one down into members, like I mentioned before, and then we're going to use the members throughout. And then once we do that, we're going to then be able to see more of the repetitive work, and then we're going to break that repetitive work into smaller functions. And then as we start to see, as we start to break things into smaller functions, and then we break other functions into smaller functions, we're going to notice, oh, I did the same thing up here. I can just change a bit of that function and then use it here, and now I have the same function up here, down here. And so you want to do it in passes. You don't want to do it all at once. It would definitely break your code. So you notice everything works. Everything still works. Select, move the guys. Everything works. So let's begin, and in a working state, let's go and say current target. And if you want to link to this project, you can definitely get to it later. Look at the chat really quickly. And let's see. Promote to local variable. And do current, or yeah, should. And even the variable name doesn't make a lot of sense. I have to come back and change a lot of this code, and that's just from me learning, and that's totally fine. Clear only titles is what I'm going to call this variable, and I'm going to call this clear only targets. And now I'm going to do the same thing. Let me close all these out again. And I believe it's, let's see, what function was it that I just did? I'm sure I'm moving very fast, but let me know if I'm moving too fast. Okay. Yeah, so this function right here that I did at the beginning is what I'm going to do to this clear targets. And so this is a very basic example. Add the variables at the beginning and use them throughout. And I guess these aren't really necessary, but I could make these functions because I'm sure at some point I've done the same operation before. I've removed an actor from the visible actors array. Maybe I don't have to necessarily do this check on the outside. I could encapsulate it into a function. So let's go to can target. That's fine. We're going to track down all of the use of this single target variable. So I'm going to drag one here. Get. There's one there. And there's one, let's see there. It's this one. So I'm going to drag this target here. And I believe that goes all the way down here. Down here. Okay. Now, I'm doing all this. I'm not checking the logic. This could be completely pointless, but we want to make sure that you do this in passes, as I said, just so that you don't break your own code. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. That'd be terrible. Check here. And here. You notice, I'm kind of doing a lot of the same thing in like multiple places. So it's already giving you hints that, I might be able to reduce some of the work I'm doing, which is awesome. Reduce work. Lazy is better, my friends. Lazy is better. So do these two. I'm almost positive that they need these two. And we have these two branches, and I think those are it. Let's see. Clear only targets should be this one, I believe. Yep. And that's the other one. And we have one more target. And plug this back in. Now, even when you're programming in like C++ or anything like that, uh, if you know that you're going to access, some memory, or more specifically, yeah, memory, like some pointer of memory, um, you create a local reference on the stack, and you point that memory address to your, local reference. And you do that because you know you're going to use it throughout the code over and over and over again. It also just makes the readability of that a lot easier. Like, who wants to continually cast or continually convert something into something else just to get this one thing that you want, right? So if that's the case, why don't more people do that with Blueprint? And so I've noticed some people do, but it's not common. And so for me, I'm telling myself, like, I should be doing this, I should be breaking things down out like this, so that my code is readable to other people and not just myself. Um, so, so as long as you have the Blueprint talent, of course, you have to be Blueprint skilled in the Unreal way. This will make sense. And so, like, you see this now, like, just this little section here, dramatically better than what's going on over here to the right. I mean, it's just more inviting. You just want to go and kind of explore just to know, because you have to focus. Like, you won't be able to understand the picture unless you see parts of it, and that's kind of the idea. And so it kind of all goes back to focusing on certain areas and having all of the information related to that area within that, visible, frame. So it's like, if you can imagine, you have 10 lines of code, and there's only so much space within the screen and that you can see. I have Visual Studio up. I mean, say you look at your code like this, but say you look at your code a little bit bigger. I mean, there's only so many lines you can look at one time, and really, it's only this much. Even though you have more space, you're only going to read a few lines within that space and really focus on it. And you're going to scroll down, and you're going to scroll down. And so, when you're dealing with Blueprint, you want to think of it the same way. You only want to look at this part of the code and understand it. You want to look at this part of the code and understand it. And I'm like repeating this over and over because it's really important to understand that concept as a programmer. And if you're going to be doing Blueprint, you're a programmer. So it's your responsibility. It's your oath, like doctors. We're like doctors for computers. Your oath is to make sure every code you write is legible and readable, because someone else is likely going to take over your work, and if they can't understand it, then you've wasted their time and your time. So, oh damn, I just changed that. Alright, so this, I also noticed I'm always getting the 0. Now I assume, okay, I'm not exactly sure why I actually did this, and this is going back to my point. So I'm going to change this part of the code rather than the beginning first. So I'm just going to start at the back and see what I can change first when I'm in the loop, at least when I'm in the loop. So looking at all of this code, I'm going to see what's closely related and try to join them as one encapsulated function. Obviously, these are just checks, so these will be a separate function on their own. I already have this macro here, so I don't need to necessarily make another macro. Maybe I can make this into a macro. It basically just checks if it's within clicked. So let's just do that. I'll right click, collapse the macro. And some people ask, why would you make this a macro? Why not make this a function, right? It's not subject. I guess it's kind of subjective, but what I'll give you is, if you're doing a very basic kind of atomic function, like all you're checking is if it's valid or not, or if it contains this object or not, or if you're just doing some adding or subtracting, you're not necessarily, it's really difficult to like objectify it, but you just something that's very granular, something that's not like a class, just something that's kind of helping or adding to something already existing. Like I wouldn't necessarily make a whole class in macros. I would make macros to help another class that already exists. So if that helps kind of clear some of that. And so like these macros I usually use as an extension of what I already have that exists. So like, oh, I'm going to just check if this has something in the array, and I want to encapsulate that as a function, or as a macro, sorry. And that just makes it clear to me what I'm doing, and of course I'm going to do this over and over and over again. And it's not, even though I'm calling clear targets over again, I'm not necessarily calling that outside the code. I'm calling the macros usually within a function or within something else. I'm not usually calling macros on their own. I don't just call a macro unless you're spawning something. Then maybe that would make more sense. But even then, that macro would be within a function that maybe is called spawn. And so maybe that's the difference. You want to keep macros, or usually they're part of something else that's bigger. I don't know. So I'm going to collapse this to a macro as well. And let's see. Maybe I didn't really have to actually. Yeah, let me fix that. I'm going to undo. This is actually a variable of the class, so I can encapsulate all of this. Oh, there we go. Okay. And there we go. And this macro doesn't really make a lot of sense. Let me change that. I did this yesterday. Should clear target, or all. So basically, it's saying, should it clear just this or just this target, or should it clear all of the targets? And I don't want to spend too much time on that, because that's more like legacy logic. But let's just continue on and continue to encapsulate some of these functions. And so this section right here is clearing just the title, and it's also calling these delegates that are part of this actor, or this actor component, sorry. And so I have clear target. I also have this add in here. I don't think that's necessarily related. It is adding to something, which is this temp actors, and it's using that down here. But it's not necessarily clearing the target itself. And so that's one of the things you want to be careful about. You don't want to encapsulate two different responsibilities within one function. And so this section of the code is only responsible for removing the title. So, and we can also change this as well. I'm going to get component by class, and I'm going to change this to target component. And I could change that to this. And now I'm going to change this later, but I just want to remove that for now. And so I'm going to select all of this. And I'm going to make this a function instead of making it a macro. And partly is that I think if I make this a macro, it won't actually work. Let's see. No, it won't, because I'm calling these two meshes functions, and delegates and things of that nature are not allowed inside of those. So we're going to make this a function and call it clear title. Okay. Don't mind that sound. Let's see. Alright. So I'm going to remove these two variables. And then we can drill in further. So, again, we got the spaghetti going here, spaghetti going here. This is not too bad. I wouldn't mind just duplicating this. And so let's create some local variables, just as we did before. And actually, let's do one thing too. So I'm going to check is valid first. So then I don't have to do it outside. And also, it's valid. And then I'm going to save both. Yeah, that's my girlfriend. Current target. Current actor. Let's see. Oops. Not what I wanted to do. Current. Damn it. What is this? Sorry. Oh wow. Okay, so current call. Sorry about that, guys. Current actor. Delete this. And delete this. Delete this. Current actor. And save that. One sec, guys, sorry. Is there a way to get around the confusion that occurs when you set a breakpoint on a macro node? Right. Well, you can't breakpoint macro nodes. So, yeah, that's a big issue. You can't breakpoint macro functions at all. You can step through them, but you can't really debug them. So that's part of the reason that I go back to you want to make sure that when you're creating macros, that macros are an extension of something else that already exists. So you would be passing variables into your macros, and they would be doing things with those variables. So presumably, if you've done it that way, you would be able to debug the variables that were put into the macro. But if you're creating the stuff inside of the macro, then you're gonna have problems. And so that's mainly it. Say if you're like doing a spawn script, you could totally pass parameterize, like, oh, maybe you pass the enum for this type of actor, or you pass this for this type of actor, and it spawns different objects, and you want to just hide the spawn actor function, you would still have to fall back on knowing the enum and things of that nature of what you spawned or what you passed to your macro and debug that information. So you never want to put the critical information that you're looking for inside of a macro. They're like anonymous functions. They don't really belong to anything, and so you can't really debug them. You can step through them. That's about it. So there's no, yeah, it sucks. It sucks. I will say that much. Let's see. Comp. Let's see. Turning this on. So now we're like really to like the meat of the conversation, which is, oh crap, that's, see, obviously not right. Which is basically pasting these nodes everywhere. I know it just looks super boring, but this is you're going to like love yourself after this. So it's definitely worth your time. Definitely worth your time. We have current actor here. And then we also have current actor here. Okay. And then we have this this here, and that's totally fine. But now what we can do is I can move that here, copy another one here, and I believe it's this actor. No, it's not. I'm a fool. Fully fool. Okay, there we go. And this one. Alright. Great. So everything's separated, which is awesome. So, you know, you would definitely want to use the reroute nodes. Reroute nodes save your life. Because what you really want to do is, like, if you're going to use these reroute nodes, they should be the dress up, you know, some very short distance movement. You don't want to, you know, have this guy all the way over here and then try to wrap it around just so it looks good. That's not a fix. It's definitely not a fix. You don't want to do that. So believe me, I would do the same thing. So that's why, again, this is why I go back to my own work and I show you this is what I used to do. Not doing it anymore. A lot of my blueprint looks a lot better now. But that's just because, you know, experience, I guess. I also, you know, came across this SRP and really, I've kind of been doing it already, just from what I've learned over the years. But I've really been buckling down and reading more about it just to kind of really use it in every bit of code that I do, everything that I do. I want it to be reusable. And so, it's very important, guys. Very important stuff. Let's see. So we have this actor, and you see we got the spaghettis going again. Spaghetti. So what we want to do is break this down even further. Like, it's very easy now. Like, now that everything's encapsulated, you're not like trying to decipher this flying spaghetti monster in crypto code. This is like its own encryption on top of this foreign language. And so now it's very obvious, like, okay, I really need to make some smaller members for these functions because there's wires going everywhere. This is using it, that's using it. So I'm going to create a local variable and call it current element. Current element. And then now I can plug that in there, copy this here, copy that there, copy that there. Look at that. It's like cleaning the cobwebs away from this dusty code. This is great. This is great. This is all good. Look at this. I mean, I've literally done nothing, and I mean, it just looks so much better. I mean, look at that. Look at this. Look at that line compared to this. Even like we could probably, you know, encapsulate more of this, but just dramatically doing that dramatically increases the readability. It's like now I can go in here. Okay, we have an element. Okay, we're checking if it's clicked. Should clear or not. This is confusing. I give you that, but it's you understand, like, okay, it needs these two booleans, and now it's gonna go true. It's not like, oh, it's checking this. What's this mean? Oh, okay. Wait, it's checking this? What is? No, I don't know. It's like you shouldn't have to explain with big comments about what this is doing in a paragraph, right? Like, you don't want to. It's not what you want to do. Really, if you're going to do something like this, you just want to say, you know, remove title or something very simple, and you know, that's it. You just to give people a sense of like what's happening from a distance. But you don't want to write a whole paragraph here to explain everything in detail, because if you're doing that, then you haven't done a good job at explaining what your code is doing using the syntax and using the language itself. You don't want to use your text. You want to use the language, which is variables and macros and ensign, stuff like that. So we're going to continue to break this down. We have visible actors that we want to remove from. So this is basically taking this temp actors array, going through and removing them from this visible. So it's checking. We only remove what we consider a target. And so it's like this, right? We're going to keep this outside. Right click, collapse the macro. And I'm going to say clear targets, or clear titles from array. Oh wow, we're running out of time here. Wow, alrighty. So I'm going to try to get through the rest of this. So I'm going to move along. Just going to breeze on what I was talking about before. So I think we really covered kind of dissecting what is SRP, what isn't SRP. You know, when I was talking about not encapsulating this operation within this function, and maybe this should be encapsulated somehow, but either way, they shouldn't be together, right? They should be completely isolated from each other. They should never be confused as something of the same. And so that's what we're doing. So keep them far away from each other. Because now I'm able to like clearly say, okay, we're iterating through here, and we're storing that, we're checking, clearing, add it. Go here, and now we're moving it, and that's it. You know, there's not a lot of steps. You know, there really shouldn't be a lot of steps. And if there is, then you've confused me and everyone else. So let's see. I think that's good. I'm gonna go. Like, I'm sure people probably hate me for this, and I would agree that it's okay. I'm gonna kind of do the same thing I did up here because these are all kind of the same sort of, except this one's doing removing targets, but this one right here is actually removing visible targets. And so, actually, what would make more sense is if I did the same thing I did up here down here, which is I'm going to remove this stuff, this stuff. You see it's doing something slightly different here. It's removing immediately from the visible actors. You know, because it's going to remove them all, I believe. It's not some, it's like all. So, sorry for moving around a bunch. Let's see. Okay, so this is part of that. And this is what you have to do. You have to go through your code, really sit down and look at it, because I didn't do this before, and isolate parts of your code and then encapsulate that into smaller bits of logic. Because, you know, the golden rule in programming is, or not, I wouldn't say golden rule, the standard is that if your lines, you know, if you go over, say, 10 lines or 20 lines, you begin to introduce more bugs into your code. So I'm going to go to something, okay, well, I don't have it open. I don't want to bother you guys with that. But basically, if you go over a certain number of code, you dramatically increase the number of bugs that you have in your code. And that's because it's impossible to keep up with what's going on. So if you notice, a lot of my logic out here is perfectly fine. Like, most of them don't go over 15 nodes in a array. So, like, not an array, but in a row, sorry. So they don't go over 10 to 15 nodes in a row. And that's just so that you, in your mind, can clearly understand what's going on. And now, some people might not like exposing all of their events on the outside, but it's very similar to just creating functions. I don't see it any differently, but you still want to follow that rule of not having them very long. So if they're going to be outside and exposed, you still want to keep the number of nodes that you have, you know, horizontally or vertically. Yeah, vertically. Separated, right? No, horizontally separated, sorry. And so that's what we're just doing in here. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to borrow that function, that variable that I created before, sort in element, put this in element as well. Let's see. This is clearing targets, so I'm going to deal with that later. This needs an element, so I'm going to put it here. Let's see. All right. Delete that. Delete that. Let's get the clear title, right? And we could pipe in this new actor. Pipe in this one. Pipe this in towards the end. Remove that. Delete this. And now this has become dramatically shorter. And so that's the idea. You want to continue to shorten, you know, your functions, keep them small, and if they become too large, encapsulate parts that are large and make those parts smaller. So you're forcing yourself to dive deeper into your code as necessary. You know, and keep keep a conscious mind of how deep you're going with it. If it's becoming too much, you obviously want to kind of reevaluate whether or not what you're doing is worth it, or if you're maybe able to do some other work somewhere else to reduce the amount of work you're doing in that part of the code. Think about reusability the whole time. And that's really what this is about. So like we reduce this, this is reduced, and like what you want to end up with, as I showed before, is this right here. You know, you want things to look very easy and broken down. Should clear targets. Guess here. Should clear targets. Oh no, I shouldn't. Okay. Oh, I shouldn't clear targets. Okay. Oh, only visible actors? Okay. Oh, we got an element now. Oh, we're using that element now. Okay, that makes sense. Now we're gonna clear the target for that element? Oh, okay. And then we're checking the target to make sure it's valid, and then removing that from visible actors. I mean, this can even be encapsulated. It really should be. But again, I just want to drill home the idea that everything's encapsulated. Everything's encapsulated. And that just makes it a lot easier to follow the code. And most of the encapsulation is macros. Now, if it's something that's affecting other objects and is not things that you can just reference in, like I'm doing here, like I'm just referencing these in, then you probably shouldn't use a macro on that. You probably should use a function, because this function actually goes and removes things from other objects and adds things to other objects, while this will only check things that are related to the objects that are immediately available to it, right? So maybe that's another rule. I'll write that down. You only want to modify the variables that you're passing to your macro. I mean, in a certain context. You obviously, you can argue, oh, you could put clear targets in a macro, that makes sense. But you're affecting more than just this variable. If it's a reference from this variable, then sure. But if we go in here, it's like this component, it's the component that's associated with it. You're notifying both of them, and then you're clearing from one of them. So yeah, again, subjective. Keep you just want to keep things very legible and very easy to understand. So I think I'm getting pretty close to my time here. I want to check in with the guys and make sure it's okay. Let's see. So we want to go back to clear targets. Let's go back to the other code, not to confuse you. Back here. So here I'm doing clear. Let me just copy this. We don't want any spaghettis. So put that there. Okay. So here I'm clearing target, or I'm checking that this target is valid. If not, I skip it. If it is valid, or if it isn't valid, I clear everything. Sorry. That goes back to the way my logic works in here. And the way this function works is that if you provide a single target, it will clear only that target. And if you flag, I want to clear this single target, and I want to only clear the title, it'll clear only the title of this single target. But if you put only titles and you have no single target, it will actually go through and clear all the titles for every actor. So that was just a breakdown or some context of the way this function works. And it's really irrelevant, because the biggest takeaway here is, again, encapsulating the functions. Your logics tell you a story, right? So we see this is clearing the visible actors. We can see this one also clearing titles. This one's clearing clicked actors. So let's see if there's something I can do to minimize some of this. Let's see, clicked, visible, and this is from visible actors. So if you go here, I mean, that would be silly. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to encapsulate this anyway. go to collapse the macro, and what I'm going to say is clear all visible actors if invalid. So let's see how can we name that something that makes sense. So clear visible should clear visible targets. That works. And we don't really want to distinguish what happens after. It's really just for the node itself to understand. Let's see. We also, I see that we're using this element again, so we can probably break this out. Element. Do that right there. So let's push this out a little further just so we can get some breathing room, and then I can move this forward. Let's see. Okay. So now that's completely isolated. That's isolated. Now we just have this middle section left. Now everything's pretty much cleaned up. Right? You have a pretty firm idea of what's going on, or at least if you were to take the time to read it, you would be able to understand it. And that's the idea. You don't necessarily have to make it instantly understandable, because no one's instantly going to just understand something all the time. But you want to be able to create some organization and consistency, so that when people are going through your code, they can build up in their own mind what's happening. And so by creating these variables and breaking them out, and then using them piece by piece rather than all at once, which is because it's in your mind, it's very easy to think about all at once. People are trying to reassemble what's happening in your mind. And so that's why you encapsulate these functions right here, and it just makes it very easy to rebuild what's happening. Okay, like, okay, I get it. Like, oh, okay, like to you, this is like, to someone else, this is their first time ever seeing this. And so they're going to see clear targets only a bunch of times for the first time. And in their mind, they're going to draw the connections to all of the nodes. And that's what you want. But if you're literally drawing all the connections, it's hard for people to understand. So I'm going to also clear this one. Let me plug this into here just so I can get that end piece. Collapse the macro. And do, I think it's clicked actors, right? So let's click here. Do should clear clicked actors. Or I should say clicked targets. And then I also again want to make this the same function, or the same output, because we don't need to distinguish that to anyone else or to any other function. And another takeaway too is just to be very have intent when you're writing your code. You do everything with intent. It's a very good thing just to take away. And so that's why I say, I don't always have all the best answers. I might not have the best answers, at all, but you want to have certain levels of intent in your code so that someone will understand it. But if you're just doing things haphazardly and you just have a bunch of stuff like this, all connected, it doesn't really make a lot of this. It's not very coherent. And so no longer target, no longer visible. And let's see. I'm just gonna wrap up with this last part, and I think we're pretty much done here, guys. Um, so let's do. Oh, I don't have to do that. Let me just pop this in here. Set that there, and then I'm gonna reuse again, just like before. I'm going to copy this over. Not there, but everywhere else. I think we use it here. Let's see, get to do class. And we gotta get target component again. Target component. And check is valid. And we do is valid again. Is valid. And we're going to just orphan this for a moment. And crap. Okay, sorry. We want to make sure to create. Well, actually, let me put this in function. And copy this. Copy this. So select this. Select this. Select this. Select this. Okay. Just those pieces I'm going to use encapsulate. And you see I've already did that work there. I kind of repeated myself. So actually let me just get rid of this. Control click and then go back and right click and collapse the macro. Oops. Sorry, collapse the function. And we can say clear clicked. Clear targets. Oh, sorry. Clear target. Sorry. Singular, guys. Singular. Now from this local actor, we can drive everything else. So I'm gonna check is valid, and then I'm going to get component by class. I'm gonna remove what I did on the outside because I have to do this again. I'm gonna check this. And then I'm going to put these two in functions. And you can see, like, just as I'm trying to do this, it's impossible to really see what's going on. And so in the local function, say current actor. Oh, really? Damn it. So I don't ever use that. Current, or just say comp. Target. Okay, now let's reuse again these variables. So anywhere this is being used is a target comp. So I'm gonna write that here. And also another thing, if you Control C and you Control V, wherever your mouse is, that's where it's gonna spawn it. So just thought I'd drop that in there. Oh crap, I wasn't supposed to remove that yet. There we go. There we go. Cool. Cool. Got some actor references here. We don't want those to be there. We want this to be duplicated again, because again, we don't want the Piketties. And we also have this actor here. So remove that. And I believe that's again the new actor. Remove that. Look at that. So now I can remove this extra one. I'm gonna say target. Oops, sorry about that. target. We got that. Got that. You know, you could easily just like use something to organize this, but I enjoy doing it by hand. Because I'm a dinosaur. Let's see. Damn it. Damn it. Alright, cool. Everything's really coming together now. If you look back here, you can see you can delete this now. Delete. You don't need that. You don't even need the element there now. We can move that here. Bam. Don't need that. Don't need this. Look at that, man. Look at that. Let me check something here. Let's see. Yeah, okay. There we go. All encapsulated away. Look at that. Look at that. Ladies and gentlemen. Dude. Let's see. Damn it. Alright. Cool. Alright, so there you go. As you can see, we've now cleaned up this function. Hit compile. We can see if it still works. That's all that matters, right? It still works. Look at that. Still working. Click on one guy, goes over there. This guy goes over there. We can look at our outline if we want to. See the characters down here. See, I did click them. Click them. We got all our targets. So, everything looks good. I mean, really, thank you guys for joining me. It pretty much wraps it up here. It's, you know, I think they're writing something. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. You want to make sure that you break everything down into smaller functions and you know, keep everything organized. You know, everything you don't want to use comments. The goal is that people can understand your code just by reading the code itself. Comments are there for you and for keeping reference to train your train of thought, but it shouldn't be how you're explaining the way your code works, because that's bad programming. Alright guys, let's see what's happening here. Hey guys, what's going on? Checking it out. Let's see, just making sure I got this done. This looks good. This looks good. Alright. Again, thank you guys for joining me. I'll check you next time. Peace.